Hello and welcome to this week's Spotlight. My name is Derek and today we are checking out some Steiner Predator 4 scopes. So here we have the three magnification range options. We have a 2.5 to 10 by 42 and 4 to 16 by 50 and 6 to 24 by 50. The 4 in Predator 4, as you would have guessed, just refers to the zoom ratio. So the main takeaway of these scopes I will mention first. Being hunting scopes, most hunters want as simple a scope as possible while still being able to make shots out to a couple hundred yards. And they don't want to have to go to sniper school or take some long range class in order to do so. And I get it, it's a totally reasonable request for an optic, especially for hunting, and for something like these, right under the $1,000 mark, you still want something with really good glass, and it'll still reach out to about 400 yards or so. If we look at some of the dimensions, they all have 30mm tubes, will range in length from 13.3 to 14.7 inches long, and will range in weight from 22 to 24 ounces. All will also be second focal plane with the E3 illuminated reticle. Now that's a bullet drop reticle that we'll get to in just a second, but two things that I want to mention first. The reticle lighting on these is daylight visible, so even though that might not be something that's relevant all the time, it is still nice to see. And the reticle subtensions will be accurate at max power, but just in case you forget, at the top of the image you'll see where it says E3 and then in this case 16 next, because this is the 4 to 16. So good little fail-safe there. Now that reticle is pretty much an average of a lot of different hunting rounds, and you'd be surprised how many actually follow a pretty similar flight path out to about that 400 yard mark. Now one thing that I do want to mention is that the reticle still gives you what you need for longer range shots, but it's not too busy. You know, for a hunting scope especially, you want to keep it as simple as possible, and this does. Of course, if you want to know exactly how your round compares to the reticle, just fire up a ballistics calculator if you don't have any actual real-world info on your bullet, and punch in the ballistics. Say you're shooting 150 grain, this bullet with that ballistic coefficient, this altitude, temperature, all that, and see how it compares to the reticle. Because if we look at the image of the reticle, the first line, which is supposed to represent 200 yards, is 1.5 MOA from center. The second line is supposed to represent 300 yards. That's 4.3 MOA from center. And the last one at 400 yards is 7.2 MOA from center. Now, if your bullet doesn't exactly match that drop profile, we do have some options for you. Now in hunting, you have an acceptable amount of deviation from where you're actually aiming to where that bullet actually hits. And with whitetail, ideally you want to be in an area about this big, about 7 inches across. You could extend that out to the size of about a pie plate, as the saying goes, and that's a good metric as well. As you go further out though, the smaller that deviation can be when it comes to the MOA on the target. Being off by 3 or even 4 MOA at 100 yards is actually fine, because you're still within that pie plate, that's a vital area on a whitetail. So that's actually still okay. However, if you're off by 3 to 4 MOA at 400 yards, you're off by getting on for that much. And that could cause a miss or a hit on the deer where you really don't want to. So if you actually zero the rifle at 300 yards on the 300 yard marker on the reticle, you're preserving your precision at those distances where it matters most, like 300 and 400, and at ranges closer than it, you might be off in terms of MOA, but you're still going to be hitting very close to the center of the target and still within that vital area of the animal. The second option is you plug in your info to a ballistic calculator and just simply see at what distances it reaches that 1.5, 4.3, and 7.2 MOA. Quick example, 175 grain 308 was almost a perfect match for that. From with a 100 yard 0, 2, 3, and 400, pretty much bang on. However, if you shoot a flatter round, something like a 6.5 PRC, The distances that I calculated were, the first line would be 250, second line would be 360, and the last line would actually be about 500 yards. Now that of course varies depending on what load you're shooting, but you do have the option to do the first technique where you just zero at a closer range if your ballistics are close enough, or if you're really off of that, just print out a picture of that reticle, write down at what distance each line actually refers to, and then a lot of guys will just print out a small picture of that about, that big or so, and they'll just stick it to the gun. They'll keep a copy in their pocket or something like that. That way they have a reference for their particular ammo. Okay, that was a bit on that reticle, but I think it was very important to spend a little time going through that. Of course, if you have any questions on that, just give me a call. I'll be happy to talk to you on it. Moving on to the rest of the scope, we of course see capped turrets on the elevation and windage. Quick mention on these, they don't have a lot of turret travel, which is fine. This is not an optic that you're going to be dialing turrets out to however many yards. It's really just enough to get you dialed in at 100 and then use your reticle for the rest of it. As such, I really would avoid using a 20 MOA rail or mount on the top two, the 4-16 and the 6-24. They don't have enough travel in the turrets to compensate for a 20 MOA mount or rail and still get a 100 yard zero. So keep it a 0 for that and you'd be good. The 10 power has enough where you could get a 100 yard zero with a 20 MOA rail. So if just by happenstance your rifle has 20 built into it already, you're fine. You don't need to change it. But if you're starting from scratch and you still need to buy mounts or a rail, I would just say go with the 0 and you'll be totally good. As far as parallax goes, on the 2.5-10, it is fixed at 100 meters. The 16 and 24 power have adjustable with a minimum setting of 20 meters. As far as which one you should consider going with, up here in Pennsylvania, in the Northeast, most of our hunting shots are pretty close. I mean, the last one I shot was about 75 yards, and that's pretty much par for the course here in Pennsylvania. So the 2.5-10 would be what I would go for something like that. The 4-16 is kind of your good do-it-all scope if you're doing some northeast closer range hunting, but then some longer range shots, maybe out west a little bit. This is a good one to go with. If you're just looking at long range shots, of course, like out west or maybe even some prairie dog hunting or something of that nature, 6-24 is going to be your answer for that. As far as what it comes with, really not much, just a box that's difficult to open with one hand. Manual, cleaning cloth, and a bikini style lens cover. No sunshade or anything like that, but just wanted to let you guys know what it came with. Overall, I mean, Steiner, definitely well known for their glass quality. These are very sturdy optics, really good for hunting without being too complicated. If you do want to see what they have as far as a long range tactical precision optic, we did a video that we'll post right up here on the M7XI 2.9-20. That was a beauty of an optic, so please check that out. These also are part of the Steiner Ring It Up promo. So you buy any of these and they will send you a free pair of the H series rings. That is good until the end of 2021. And finally, last but not least, these do qualify for our red 1-day shipping at no additional charge. So definitely check that out and we can have one of these to you as soon as tomorrow. So that'll wrap it up for the Steiner Predator 4. Comment below on what you would put one of these on. We would be really interested to know in how you guys are using these optics, and doing so would also put you in the running for a free hat. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next week.